You know that amazing sweet smell of a fresh raspberry? Have you ever stopped to wonder what exactly that smell is? Well, today we're going on a little quest, not through a raspberry patch, but through a lab, to see if we can actually build that exact scent from scratch. Let's dive into this chemical adventure. So what's the secret? It really all boils down to one specific molecule called raspberry ketone. That's the main chemical player behind that classic aroma. But hey, if it's already in the fruit, why not just get it from there? Well, that's where the problem and our whole quest really begins. Nature, it turns out, is pretty stingy. And this is where you really see the scale of the challenge. To get just a few milligrams of this stuff, that's a tiny, tiny amount, you'd need to process a whole kilogram, over 2 pounds of actual raspberries. That makes trying to extract it from the fruit itself just wildly expensive and impractical for, candy, perfume, pretty much everything. So we need another way. And that is where chemistry swoops in to save the day. Instead of harvesting tons of fruit, we can just build the raspberry ketone molecule ourselves in the lab. A lot of the time, the building blocks are cheap, common chemicals that actually come from petroleum. It's kind of like playing with molecular Legos. So let's head into the lab and start our build. Okay, our quest begins. The first step is what we'll call the first forging. We need to craft the core of our molecule. And to do that, we're going to use a classic chemical reaction, one that's all about snapping 2 smaller pieces together to make something bigger. The official name is an aldol condensation. But hey, don't worry about the fancy name. All you really need to know is that this is basically the chemical version of welding. We are forging a brand new, super strong bond that's going to create the backbone of our final raspberry molecule. The recipe itself is surprisingly simple, at least on paper. We take our 2 starting ingredients, 4-hydroxybenzaldehyde and acetone, and mix them together. Then we add a catalyst, in this case, sodium hydroxide, which is like hitting the go button on the reaction. And then we just wait. For a full 24 hours, these molecules are in there connecting and rearranging themselves. All right, 24 hours later and boom, we've got it, our intermediate molecule. We're one big step closer to raspberry ketone. But there's a problem. Chemistry is almost never this clean. The reaction created a whole bunch of other junk we didn't want, which introduces the first real villain of our story. And this messy result brings us to one of the most important and honestly one of the most frustrating parts of chemistry. It's not just about making new stuff, it's about cleaning up the mess afterward. Right now, our hero molecule is trapped in this sea of gunk, and we have to rescue it. The chemist in our source video put it perfectly. He said, all this red stuff is just polymerized junk. See, the same conditions that helped us make our product also caused some of the other molecules to just link up into these long, sticky, useless chains. So for our quest, we're going to call this gunk the tar. And this really sets up the challenge perfectly, doesn't it? On one side, you have our hero, the pure, beautiful, off-white powder that we're trying to isolate. And on the other side, the villain, this sticky, reddish-brown tar that's contaminating everything. The battle is on. To defeat the tar, our chemist has to run what you could call a purification gauntlet. This means neutralizing the reaction, filtering it, and then recrystallizing. That's a clever trick where you dissolve the crude product in hot liquid, and as it cools, the pure crystals slowly reform, leaving all the junk behind. It is a slow, tedious process of washing and filtering over and over again. After all that hard work, victory. The intermediate molecule is finally pure. It's a beautiful white powder. But here's a totally fascinating twist. Even though it is just one small chemical step away from being the final raspberry ketone, it has absolutely no smell. Nothing. The magic hasn't happened yet. And that brings us to the climax of our quest, the final transformation. This is the most powerful, but it's also the most dangerous step in the whole process. It means we have to tame one of the most reactive elements there is. This final step is called hydrogenation. It's a fancy word, but it just means we need to add hydrogen atoms to our molecule. This will get rid of one specific double bond. That's the very last thing that separates our odorless powder from the fragrant raspberry ketone we're after. Now let's be clear, working with pure hydrogen gas is no joke. You have to seal the entire system and get rid of every last bit of air.
Why? Because if there's any oxygen around, the catalyst you need can actually ignite the hydrogen. And in a closed container, that can lead to, and I'm quoting here, a nasty explosion. So yeah, the stakes are pretty high.
So how do you pull off a reaction this risky? You need a guide, a little magical helper. In our quest, that helper is a catalyst called palladium on carbon. This stuff is incredible. It grabs the hydrogen, breaks it apart safely, and then carefully walks it over to the exact spot on our molecule where it needs to go. It completely tames the beast. Okay, the dangerous step is done. The hydrogen has been added, the transformation is complete. It is time for the big reveal. Let's see and, smell the results of all this work. After everything, did our quest actually succeed?
Yes! Success! After the foraging, after the battle with the Tara, after that super risky final step, the raspberry ketone molecule has been made. The quest is complete, but the story isn't quite over just yet.
And what's the grand prize for all that work? 2 grams. That's it. We started with 10 grams of material, and after days of reacting and purifying, this is all that's left. It's just a great reminder of how tricky and delicate this kind of chemistry can be. All right, this is the moment we've all been waiting for. We did it. We have the pure, isolated molecule that's supposed to be the signature scent of a raspberry. So what does it actually smell like all by itself? Is it a perfect copy of the real thing? And here is the final amazing twist, straight from the chemist himself. The pure stuff is actually a little underwhelming. He says it's faintly sweet and fruity, kind of like a blue raspberry candy, but it doesn't actually smell like raspberries. So what on earth is going on? And this reveals the big lesson of our entire quest. A natural scent is almost never just one thing. Our lab-made ketone is a single, pure note. But a real raspberry? That's a whole symphony. Its smell is this complex cocktail of dozens and dozens of different aroma chemicals. We successfully made the lead singer, but we're missing the rest of the band. And this is why all this matters. It explains why making really authentic artificial flavors is so hard. Some scents, like vanilla, are pretty simple. That smell is dominated by one molecule, vanillin, so the artificial version is a really close match. But raspberry scent is a whole crowd of molecules, and capturing that true essence is way more complicated. So it kind of leaves you with this wild final thought. We just followed this whole complicated quest to build a really pleasant, fruity smell from the ground up. If you can do that, could a chemist just reverse the process? Could you take simple, boring molecules and intentionally combine them to engineer the absolute worst smell imaginable? It really seems like the power of chemistry works in both directions.